Mercedes has an illustrious history of pillarless coupes going all the way back to the W108 that were made from 1965 to 1972. And you can see here, there is in fact no B-pillar in these cars. It's a frameless window design, and when both front and rear windows are down, it gives you the illusion of a floating canopy. Quite an elegant design, and something that Mercedes enthusiasts have treasured for many, many generations. The only one that really broke tradition was the early 2000s W208 CLK, which did in fact employ a B-pillar. But I would say this car, it's a 2019 E-Class Coupe, embraces the pillarless design quite well in a modern fashion. You can see more than a passing resemblance in the rear to the larger S-Class Coupe that was made during this time period. And if I had to nitpick with the overall design of this car, it would be with this triangular rear window, which I think makes the design look just a little bit awkward. I understand why they did it, because they would have needed to use an enormous rear window, and I don't think they quite figured out how to make that work. The front end of this also looks a bit blunt-nosed, as was typical for Mercedes of this time period. But this car was a return to form for Mercedes. It was a car that you took to the country club on weekends. You took on the weekend trip out to the Hamptons. It wasn't your daily driver, because let's be honest, if you bought one of these, you probably already had 2 or 3 other cars in your garage that were larger and more practical than this. You bought this for the looks. So we are in the 2019 E450 Coupe. This is an interesting car because it's not an all-out sports car, obviously. It is a personal luxury coupe. And in 2019, that space is almost completely defunct. Audi has abandoned it. BMW still has the 8 Series Coupe, which I would argue has more towards sport than this car in a lot of ways. Cadillac has abandoned the space. Lincoln has abandoned it. They don't make cars anymore. So really, this is kind of a unique proposition. And I guess, you know, the first thing is we need to look around the interior and see if this actually has the makings of a luxury car. I would argue that it is mostly nice in here. I think the center vents here are a cool design feature. It's a nod to the eyeball vents that you had in the 1970s, early 1980s W123 coupes. You have some real switches and buttons on the center stack. This is probably not the most successful deployment I've seen of a infotainment system setup. You have both a touchpad and a rotary click knob. It's just kind of odd and awkward to use. But the wood looks nice. This was, you can see we actually have real gauges occupying the very large screen here. And this was before Mercedes switched to an all digital screen with no gauges in it. But yeah, I think it works. It's a nice place to spend time, even though this is a 2019 with I think just about 50,000 miles on it. There's really no squeaks, no creaks, no rattles inside. A little bit of wind noise you can hear coming from the right B-pillar. That might be down to sealing. Frameless windows are always hard to get right in terms of sealing. But I guess the other question that we need to figure out is, how does this car actually drive? And so far I've gone down a highway here for a couple miles, so I don't really have any firm impressions yet. I can tell you that this car uses the twin turbo V6. So this was before Mercedes switched to the turbocharged straight six that became available in later generations. So far it seems like it's a smooth operator. It's not a particularly characterful motor, at least not on light throttle. Maybe we'll, as I dig more into it, we'll figure out more about its character later in this drive. Let's see if traffic clears up a little bit here. We can get into the throttle. Mid-range thrust is definitely assertive. Again, not really a very characterful sounding motor. It just kind of does its thing without much fuss. And I guess I'm a little bit conflicted about that, because on one hand, it's a relaxing car, able to gobble up highway miles if that's your thing. But on the other hand, I also feel like it's a little bit staid. The driving experience lacks excitement. It lacks, what I would call passion. This doesn't feel like it was a car that was made by people that care about driving. It feels like it was made by maybe several different committees of people that all had input into, one department did the brakes, another department did the steering, somebody else did the infotainment, somebody else worked on the motor, and they all sort of mashed it together into one arguably very stylish coupe. But it's not a particularly inspiring car to drive. And I guess maybe that's not really the point, but I also feel like as a personal luxury coupe, it misses the mark. The overall silkiness and refinement in its responses really aren't there. It just feels like it's going through the motions. Yes, it's quiet. Yes, it's comfortable. Yes, it's definitely quick. But nothing really stands out about this car in the way that it goes down the road. And while the inside is nice, yeah, and you have your Burmeister speakers here on the doors and the tweeters, it's not special enough to lure you into saying, yeah, I need a personal luxury coupe in my life. This is a car that I'd want to supplement my 2 or 3 other cars that I already have in my garage. I don't see that. And I think the sales numbers on these cars echo that. This was not a successful product for Mercedes. They didn't sell a lot of them. But yeah, my overall thoughts on this car are it's a nice enough car, but it's easily forgettable, and it's not something that I would put on my short list of cars to buy unless you really, really just need a modern take on a personal luxury coupe. So, hope you enjoyed it. Keep liking, keep subscribing. Stay tuned for the next one.